Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ventures podcast. My guest today is Michelle Schubert. She is the Director of Global Resources at International Literacy and Development, or ILAD for short. And in this episode, we get into a whole variety of topics related to Web3. In fact, because this is episode 101, we do a Web3 101 kind of in the middle. But first, we just get to know Michelle more, get to know about ILAD more and the type of development work that they do specifically, and it's inspiring. I mean, they're in a good handful of countries all around the world and are doing work to develop languages so that they can even participate in the global economy. You know, we talk a lot in Web3 about making the unbanked, but if you think about it, most of the unbanked don't even speak a language that's on the internet. So you need a group like ILAD that's willing to do work to develop a language so that these people can actually participate in the global economy. So, and then in the last part of the show, we talk about a specific campaign that Michelle is running to help stop the extinction of these languages, because there are about 3,000 languages that are on the brink of extinction. And so I'm always on the lookout, right? A lot of the previous episodes I've been doing on why Web3 matters. So this is a good specific example of how you can run an NFT campaign to raise money for a really good cause. So I'm excited to be able to share those details with you in this show. So if you're listening, you can also watch by visiting wclittle.com. There you'll see more extensive show notes to the things that we talk about today. And if you're watching, you can also listen anywhere that you get your podcasts. You can just search for Ventures and it should show up. So with that, please enjoy this conversation with Michelle Schubert. All right, Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
So your colleague Daniel was on a few episodes ago, and he was on a couple times, and really amazing to hear more about how your organization, International Literacy and Development, ILAD, uses human language technology to help human flourishing around the world. I'm really curious for the audience to get to know you more. How does your story intersect with Daniel and with ILAD?
Yeah, so I have worked with International Literacy and Development, or ILAD for short, for about a little over 3 years. And before that, I was doing like religious nonprofit work. And kind of maybe because of that influence in my life, I got really interested in just how do we help others? Like if that's the point of my life, which I believe it is, who's doing that really well around the world, and how can I be a part of it, and how can I use my skills and my time to promote human flourishing. And so I intersected with ILAD, who I knew was promoting human flourishing in really strategic and innovative ways, and that was just too good to not link up with. So I started working with them, and I've absolutely loved it.
So what were those, and what are those strategic and innovative ways? Like, what was it about ILAD that was so compelling to you?
There was a lot of things. Firstly, just simply like impact. Like, what is the outcome of the efforts that ILAD is putting into the world? And the outcomes that I saw immediately were the simple things like, I mean, it sounds simple, that is kind of a funny term for this, but like thousands of families lifted out of poverty. You know, I went to the field, one of the locations they were working in West Africa, and I literally met and interviewed people that had gone from making $500 a year to $10,000 a year. You know, just through their methods, just by following ILAD-ish methods. So just the impact alone was very, very much a draw for me to get into the work. But then also you asked about the innovative methods. We work in four core competencies. That's agricultural development, educational development, business development, and human language technology. And there's, you know, it's kind of easy to understand how agricultural development and educational development fit into, you know, human flourishing and really humanitarian work worldwide. But those last two are kind of more innovative as far as business development and human language technology. How exactly do those fit into promoting human flourishing around the world? And what I saw them doing in those two categories, that was kind of for me maybe really eye-opening. You don't see a lot of people focused on helping other people start businesses or helping other people create economy in their community. And then, in addition, human language technology. If you think about it, you know, there's actually millions upon millions of people who speak languages that aren't even present on the internet.
Mm.
And think of all of the information that you and I get from the internet. You know, things like, what is this rash on my leg?
Sure.
I need to be concerned about such and such bug bite.
Right.
What's the latest COVID restrictions?
Yeah.
You know, we get so much information every day. And so imagine if you don't have access to the internet, you're left out of a lot of information, a lot of business information, healthcare information, everything. So
Yeah. So for those listening and watching have consumed previous episodes, you're hearing the term human flourishing. You're hearing starting new businesses, which, yes, is Prota's purpose is to promote human flourishing by investing holistically in entrepreneurs. When I came across Daniel and Michelle and their team at ILAD, and I heard that they've been using that same term for more than a decade, it definitely made me extremely interested to learn more. And as I've learned more about the organization, how you go about defining that academically, defining human flourishing academically, and measuring return on that is, infinitely compelling. Would you mind speaking a little bit to that? Like how do you use the academic literature and how you think about outcomes to run an efficient organization?
yeah, so there's actually a whole series of metrics that we use that we get from academic papers that we could probably link in the show notes here.
Yeah.
But the categories can sound subjective, but there's been so much research on them that there is actually, measurable impact that you can measure. There's things like life satisfaction and happiness, character and virtue, meaning and purpose, financial stability, things like this that you can measure and find what was their life like before they encountered, ILAD-ish techniques and methods, and what is now their life like after encountering. And so you kind of get a lot of just data points to measure how are we doing as we, are we moving towards human flourishing in a measurable way.
So the tagline of your organization is local solutions to local problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's compelling to me is how you've been able to empower local entrepreneurs to solve local problems, because not a lot of NGOs necessarily approach it that way. Would you mind just sharing a quick story of what that has looked like?
I would love to. That's actually something that that gets me really fired up. Coming in as an outsider to a community that is facing certain struggles, it would be tempting to be like, oh, I know what your struggles are, and now I'm gonna know what the solution is, so I'm gonna fix it for you. That's tempting because we just might be a little ethnocentric where we're at, and we think we know what our problems are and how we should fix them and everything. But every community and every culture is different, and so we had been doing agricultural development in a location for years, and that had seen a lot of positive impact and positive response. But when we did a survey of 18 nearby villages asking what kinds of struggles are you facing, what do you need more of, what do you want less of, etc., we actually had a surprising response. Every single village listed access to clean water as their number one need. And we had dug a couple wells, like, because it benefited the projects we were already doing, but that wasn't like a focus of ours. And yet then we find out through survey that that's what the people want and need. That's what they're struggling with. They're walking many miles to get dirty water in some cases. And so how can we now combat that? Because we're not an aid organization, we're a development organization. So aid organizations, come in and kind of give and fix a problem and then leave typically. And that can be useful, right? That can be disaster relief. There's times that that's helpful and necessary. But that's not what we do. We do development. It's headed towards long-term sustainability. And so as you can imagine, coming in with a bunch of money and digging a bunch of wells, that's not development, and it's not sustainable. That's only sustainable as long as we have a lot of money to dig a lot of wells. And side note, we don't have a lot of money to dig a lot of wells. So we had to come up with a creative solution that uses what we have and what the people have. And so what we did was talk with local people and find out that there was a man there who wanted to start a well drilling business. Mm-hmm. And he had some borehole drilling experience and was also trained as an electrician. So he wasn't coming at this from out of the blue. And we made a deal with him. We said, hey, if you go through our business development program, which takes about 6 months or so, if you go through our business development program, it's like mentorship and business 101 and how to understand a profit loss statement and how to make sure your financials are working out and how to manage and that sort of thing. If you go through that and graduate, we will then foot the bill for the expensive rig that will be drilling the wells. But then you'll run the business, a for-profit business near the capital where people can pay to have wells dug. But then your profit, anything above your salary and the salary of your employees and any incentive structures we have in there for salary, but anything above salary goes into a surplus that is then used to drill free wells out in the villages that can't afford it otherwise. So this is a business now that is for profit, providing livelihoods for Martin, his name's Martin, and anywhere between 5 and 10 employees that he needs for each well to be dug. And then in addition, providing maybe somewhere around 6 free wells per year in the villages that need them. So it's local people providing the local solution to the local problem.
Yeah, and the kicker there is that the people doing the training even, right? Yeah. In that are local entrepreneurs. So ILAD is almost 2 degrees separated, and that is such a unique and inspiring model to be able to teach multiple generations of entrepreneurs to solve local problems and think in the long view how to go about strategically accomplishing that goal. So
yeah,
kudos to you and the team for that approach. So, all right, now where does Web3 come into this? How for you and your own personal journey? Like I've asked so many of my guests on this show, what was their aha moment with Web3? When did they start diving into it? Tell us about your diving into the Web3 rabbit hole journey here.
Yeah, so I've been a satellite to the Web3 space for maybe a year and a half. That's when I first started looking into, what's all this buzz about cryptocurrency and what's going on in this space? What can I do? Can I be involved? And the reason I really ever only stayed a satellite was because there seemed to be such a huge chasm between what I knew and felt like I could understand and what everybody else in the space seemed to understand. And so that was an intimidating chasm to toe up to. And I never, until recently, until the last maybe 4 months, took the leap to actually try to understand and push myself into those spaces. And really, the reason I've been pushing myself into those spaces, as you know, Will, is from some of the ideas that you and I have brainstormed about how can Web3 and human flourishing, intersect. And so the way that intersection looks like in my life is trying some creative NFT, trying a creative NFT campaign, or maybe a few NFT campaigns that will have 100% of the proceeds going into projects that promote human flourishing in strategic ways. For instance, an interesting thing I learned. So we were at the consensus conference last week and the Web3 Impact Summit in Austin, Texas. And it was interesting that everybody in the room was talking about how they wanted to have to make social impact happen, through Web3. And they wanted to really make sure that everyone in the world, is experiencing digital equity, that there's no one left out, that there's no one left behind. We kept hearing all these things about inclusion and everything. But what I think most of the people in the room also did not realize is that a large number of the people not included in Web3 simply don't speak the languages that can access the internet. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter how many awesome programs that you create, they are not accessible to somebody who speaks a language not present on the internet. Mm. And that's a problem that ILAD is solving. We are currently making, as you probably heard in previous episodes, making an app that is really developing a system that will connect these languages much quicker, a gamified incentivized data collection tool that will connect these languages to AI much quicker than we could have ever thought possible. And once that is ready, is being tested here in the next month or so. Once it's ready, this idea that everybody's left, or that there's so many people left out, actually, it starts to become possible to imagine, no, everybody in the world could access the internet through these tools. So that's one thing that's been really, really exciting, and one of the projects that this NFT campaign, this first one, would fund.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I mean, it's such a good point that if we're all about trying to bank the unbanked, and the unbanked don't speak a language that's on the internet, then there's a step one that needs to happen, which is develop those languages and provide that base level of access.
Exactly.
To the internet. Yeah, no, that's good. So, okay. So given that this is episode 101, I figured we could do a little session here in the middle on Web3 101. So I'm going to, given that you're relatively new on the journey, a lot of the guests I've had have been 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years in the space. I've probably, since 2016, so I'm 6 years in. A lot of the feedback from previous episodes has been, hey, you talk with somebody who's also been in this for 6 years, and we have trouble tracking what you're doing. So from your perspective, and maybe you could ask me if you want my thoughts on it, but from your perspective, what is Web3? Let's start there.
I don't know if you should have me explain this.
Well, no, it's important for everyone else who's out there who's like, okay, what is Web3? I can start spouting off a bunch of stuff, but maybe my perspective isn't as helpful.
So as I understand it, Web 1, was basic internet. You can get online, you can gather information from the internet. Web 2 then was kind of advent of more interactive things like social media, etc. But that was where the internet was able to gather information from you. Web 3, as I understand it, is in a way maybe back to basics. Like, no, you're still the one gathering the information, and no one else can gather your information unless you give permission to do so. So that's kind of maybe one of the concepts that I've gotten excited about. Another concept I've been excited about is, of course, blockchain technology and what that means for data storage, and what that means for decentralization, what that means for transparency. Those are things that I've gotten excited about. I think there are so many terms and so many abbreviations and so many programs happening in this space that, one of the ways I've been trying to learn about Web3 is to listen to podcasts or something. But when I listen to a podcast, I understand 70% of the words. So I sit there with a notebook and write down all the words that I don't understand, and then I go Google them, and then I still kind of don't understand them,
Because there are people that have been in it for too long. This is a huge part of the problem. I mean, this is huge to allow the onboarding into this space in a way that makes sense is really important. And not everyone is wired like you, where they're going to write down all those words and get after them. So yeah, I'm even just curious from your perspective, that learning process, the podcast that you've listened to, um, does it remain aggravating, or does it remain
It remains
inaccessible?
it remains intimidating for sure.
Mm,
If
mm,
I didn't have the reasons that I have for getting into it,
mm,
the reasons being my work, I'm trying to raise money and propel our work forward through creative fundraising campaigns or something.
mhm,
Uh, if I didn't have those goals, I think I'd probably be too intimidated to dive in.
mm,
It would at least be at the very least a much longer process.
mm,
Um, so I worry, that's kind of my worry with Web3 actually looking into the future. Is another thing I noticed at the conferences last week was that there's so many creators in the Web3 space. In fact, I would say mm, like it felt like 90% of the Web3 users are creators. And that doesn't leave many users left over to just use the creations, if that makes sense. And so there's a need for users. But
mm,
if all the users are going to have to go through what I'm going through right now,
yeah,
there's a lot of barriers.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Okay, I like that overview of Web3, and I think even just the motivation that you have that may be different than somebody else, right? It's almost like, what are those motivations going to be uh, for Web3? But let's do a quick shotgun round. What are blockchains?
Oh no. Okay. Blockchains are when uh information is stored, you can think of it in blocks.
Mhm.
And so let's use like um a transaction online. If I understand it right,
Mhm.
information is stored in block A, and then part of block A is brought over to block B, and the next piece of information is placed on top of block B, or that piece that we stole from A. Now there's a new part, and then piece of that block B is brought over to block C, and the new transaction information or whatever the next step information is put on block C. And so now you have a piece of the story in every block, uh,
Mm.
so that it all chains together, and there's your blockchain, if I understand it correctly. And for those of you who aren't watching the video, I was giving really great hand gestures along the way to help you understand what I'm talking.
Yeah, I think that's the first. I think that's the first time I've heard someone say that a piece of the story exists along the way. I like that from a story perspective, because you're right. Each successive block tells a story, and so then it begs the question: what story is being told on these blockchains?
Oh, I suppose it can be stories of anything. It could be stories of like financial transactions. It could be stories of decisions that are made. Now, of course, I think those decisions would have to be supported by like um I guess smart contracts or something that actually matters that those decisions would affect.
Hmm.
Um and so I suppose that's how I understand it. What else can you fill in the blanks? What else is stored in those blockchains?
You got the. That's it. I mean, the only thing I might add is ownership.
Mm,
Even in the Web3 definition, others have sort of noted that Web 1 is read, Web 2 is read and write, and Web 3 is read, write, own. And so
interesting.
the ownership is encapsulated in the story of the blockchain. Um, so that each successive block, you can prove that you own a thing, whether it's any kind of token, right? And the different types of tokens, like non-transferable tokens, non-fungible tokens, uh, and there's all these different token standards to create things like coins for currency, or uh, things that like the ape photos out there, the non-fungible tokens. Um, so all right, so okay, so I think we got blockchain. Now, what is a DAO?
Oh man, a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization, and these can function in all sorts of ways. I've kind of, I guess, heard of two kinds. Kind that I guess anybody can not anybody, but there's some sort of standard that in that case anybody can achieve to become part of the DAO. Like maybe it's paying a certain amount, or maybe it's achieving a certain thing, or maybe it's owning a certain NFT or whatever. Uh, and and so just about anybody has opportunity to become a part of that DAO. And that DAO then, when you're inside that DAO, you have some sort of governance abilities.
Mhm.
And so whatever decisions are being made, you can or do have vote or say in that, and your vote or say can't be like stolen from you in that regard. You are there, you are present, your voice can be heard, it would be recorded on blockchain, and it's there. And then there's like maybe, I guess, permission DAOs that maybe not everybody can be a part of, but everybody that is a part of it has those same rights and opportunities as far as governance is concerned.
That's good. That's good. Okay. And then I know we touched on it a little bit before, but just to hit it because it's such a hot topic. What are NFTs?
NFTs, non-fungible tokens, these are historically, I guess, digital art. Uh, and if I'm understanding the flow right, this is again from somebody who's been in the space for 4 months. So
Hmm.
give me a
Hmm.
give me a break here. But it seems like it seems like back like in the original formation of this idea, that it was truly artists that were putting art online and being able to get paid for it, and you could own truly just a piece of art. um and there can be functionality built into that where when it's bought and resold, or resold and purchased, that a piece of a transaction, that transaction goes back to the original artist. So that's cool, the original artist keeps getting paid. In fact, my coworker Daniel, had worked with some local artists, I think in like Bangladesh or something like that, getting their art online and making sure they could get paid for art where they really otherwise had no other places to sell their art. So that's cool. But then it seems like recently there's been a lot more like utility built into NFTs and NFT communities, and that's kind of exciting to think about. Like I heard of a brewery that was selling NFTs, that if you owned one of their NFTs, you got like free beers every Thursday or something like that. So it's like a cool way to like have, ownership in a like of a piece of membership in a club. And so with some sort of perks. So that's how I understand them.
Nice. And how's your adventures or your studies and research brought you into DeFi at all? Do you know what decentralized?
Decentralized finance. Not really. I mean, I've clicked on some videos.
Yeah.
and yeah, that's about as far as I go.
Yeah, it's a hot topic right now because there's a DeFi project that's in the process of melting down, and in a bear market with a project that's melting down. A lot of people are fudding fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Uh, and but the overall promise and what we've seen with DeFi projects over the last number of years remain extraordinarily exciting. And I think, especially if we talk about banking, the unbanked, the type of products that they can have, not only analogous to traditional finance, TradFi, but that can be done even more extensively. The types of yield, the type of lending programs, the type, microfinance, et cetera, nanofinance, can open up a whole nother way of providing an economy and a set of financial instruments and tools and products that can really open up the world. And I think that's why a lot of us are collectively excited. So, all right, okay. So then back on NFTs then, and you talk about a mission, you talk about what's compelling you into Web3. Can you share about what is it that you have planned for ILAD with regard to NFTs? What are you working on?
How far do you want me to go into this?
As start with surface, the thematically, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so I have about 3 NFT ideas started, one much further than the other two. Um, the first one is creating a series of NFTs representing the 3,000 most endangered languages in the world right now. So, as you would have heard talked about a couple weeks ago on this podcast, languages die. A language goes extinct about every 40 days, and along with that language goes the traditions, the culture, the history, and any information that is held within that language. It also dies. It also goes extinct. And so, not only that, not only not only does a group of people lose a lot of valuable information that's close to their heart, the world loses valuable information that we don't even know about yet. And then in addition to that, uh, there's economic ramifications for all this. If really it comes down to what are the economic opportunities that are afforded to the people that speak these languages, because if they were set up and had really full economic autonomy, they wouldn't, maybe it wouldn't be so necessary to connect their language. Their language wouldn't be dying, in other words. And so anyways, this NFT campaign will be funding projects that bring those people in their languages awareness and funding for projects that'll hopefully reverse the level of endangeredness of their language. So yeah, each NFT will be a image, I guess, showing an actual language spoken in the world that is endangered, is very likely to go extinct if nobody takes any action. And the 3,000 NFTs, we're hoping this drop will happen maybe late August, early September, sometime in there. Yeah.
Wow. And the money goes to support. Well, let me ask, where does the money go?
100% of the money will go into a DAO, and that DAO will then grant the money to projects that either bring connectivity to those languages, to like document and preserve their languages. That's part of it. That's the first step, perhaps. But then also economic development programs, much like what we do in the rest of the world, whether it's helping people of that language, people who speak that language, start their own businesses. And then if they have language technology now, like maybe it's an online business, like how much of their people, their culture, their language can get online.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be granted to economic and also human language technology projects.
Wow. Okay, so as the entrepreneur within ILAD, building this venture, running this NFT campaign, where are you at in the journey? What's the journey been like?
It's been a lot of fun. So it's really neat. The more I learn, the more I know I don't know, and the more I realize that chasm is truly a huge chasm, the chasm between myself and people that have been in the space for years. At the same time, because my mind works how it does, I want to create. And so I keep thinking of fun, like NFT ideas, like what kind of NFT would I want to own? What function could it have? Like, can I push forward? Can I innovate in Web3 and NFT spaces? Instead of the innovation happening just around the world in the developing areas that we work at, can we bring some of that ILAD innovation into the Web3 and NFT space? That's been kind of a fun thing to explore. What if an NFT could do this? Can it change and be like this the more impact it has? And yeah, that's been a really fun space.
Awesome. Those are all, everything you just said there actually are really compelling ideas. how are you thinking about the marketing? So is this the first time? Is this going to be the first episode or the
Yeah.
first time you've even talked about this publicly?
Yes. So this is definitely this is the I guess the launch of the marketing for for Stop the Extinction NFT, stopping the extinction of languages.
All right. All right. Yeah, and then so then what will be? Yeah, it sounds like you're doing this right, where you're even just hinting at it, right? A big thing in entrepreneurship land that we teach uh, as I work with lots of entrepreneurs is actually a concept that Eric Ries, the gentleman who wrote the book The Lean Startup, he's written recently, like in the last 5 years or so, an article entitled "Don't Launch." And what he basically means by that is you should actually have successive like marketing campaigns to just raise more awareness to what you're doing. So this is almost like a teaser for the Ventures podcast audience to become aware that there's a campaign coming. So okay, so when will there be a website? You know what?
Yeah. Yeah.
When will there be? What's the
Yeah.
process here?
The process will be starting in, well, it's already started, but the website we're hoping will be live and ready within the next 2 weeks or so. Let's just say June or July 1st.
Okay.
That would be a good time to look out for a lot more information about Stop the Extinction NFT.
Awesome. Okay, and then where can people go right now who really want to become aware of it, even if all the social media and the websites and things aren't set up? Is it best to find you on LinkedIn, or what's the best way to get in the game right now?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Michelle Schubert. You can find me on Instagram, the Exploracious. You can also find it as Michelle Schubert. Either one might find me, or should find me. You could also go to www.ilad.ngo, and within this week there will be a lot more information about the Stop the Extinction campaign. So you can find out all those sorts of things.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, so words for people building in Web3 right now. Advice that you have for, especially given your perspective over the last 4 months. What calls to action? What ways can Web3 community improve what they're doing?
Talk stupider. Talk stupider is the biggest. When you're talking to somebody and you're using acronyms and terms and everything that you have to be an expert to understand, that's not helpful. But additionally, another thing I would say is, as I've started to talk to other people about Web3, people that were, maybe like satellites or even just not interested, uh, I remember I was just talking to somebody yesterday, the day before, asking this person's involvement in Web3 or curiosity or interest, and they were like, "Well, how does Web3 change the videos that I watch on YouTube?" Like just practical. Like, no, I use the internet by going to YouTube. I use the internet by going to social media. I use the internet for this. How does Web3? Why would Web3 change how I do that? So questions like that I would throw to Web3 developers. Like, help the layperson understand why Web3 should matter to them.
That's good. That's good. That's good. All right. So tell us, just as a final question. I don't know if I already said final question, but obviously if a podcast host says final question, it usually doesn't mean it's final question. Tell us what is the near term future, or even mid to long term future of ILAD look like? Like, holistically, what is ILAD getting after? Because if this is going to help raise a bunch of money and exposure into ILAD, obviously it'll be earmarked specifically for the things that you're talking about with your campaign. But just for people to get a general sense of what to get excited about for ILAD in the future, can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, and it's hard for me to explain. Because it's so exciting. There's so many things going on that are world changing. So it's hard for me to even know where to start. We've touched on the idea that there's language communities all around the world that are disconnected from the greater conversation. Whether that's economy, whether that's technology, whether that's education, whether that's healthcare, there are people that cannot access those routes. And because of that are stuck, usually in abject poverty. This is people living on less than $1 or less than $1.90 a day technically, but many of them are living on way, way less than that. And so ILAD's future is one of engagement with these language communities. And to steal some Web3 terminology, we're not trying to be the heroes of the world. We're trying to do it in a way that's decentralized. We're trying to do it in a way that's replicable and scalable. Because one organization can't do it all. There's too much going on in the world. But what we can do is, toss a rock into the pond and see the ripple effects. We can, all of our projects are not all of them. We try to have all of our projects done in a way that is scalable to people around or replicable to the poorest people nearby. And so if we do a project in a way, whether it's a literacy class or an agricultural training or business development, we do it in a way that all the people around can also do it. So they can learn by osmosis almost. They can look at the people that have already gone through our programs. They can go to those farms and then they can imitate on their own farm. And then people can come to that farm and imitate what they see on their own farm. And so it's meant to be decentralized. It's meant to scale in that way and replicate. And that's really going to be the key to changing the world. It's not going to be any one person or any one org. It's going to be everybody doing their part. That includes people here in the West. That includes people overseas. Everybody is going to need to participate in some way or another. Then there's the exciting technological advancements. Once everybody can access the internet in their language, what will that mean for DeFi? What will that mean for the whole internet? There was an analogy I heard recently that of kind of the last mile. Sure, we can reach people right now. Most people in the world have access to technology in some way or another, but there's this other outer ring that doesn't. And that's a very, very difficult space. But it's exciting to me. It's really that's going to be world changing, to connect that outer ring in to the internet. So
that's incredibly inspiring. Kudos to you and the team for getting after it. I hope that the audience of the Ventures podcast and the Web3 community in general will hear more about ILAD and the different and in the initial campaign and in the additional campaigns that come from here. So Michelle, this has been just absolutely incredible. Thanks for being willing to share Web3 101 from a relatively new position. I actually think, that was extraordinarily insightful. So thank you again for being on the show.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. A couple quick things before you go. Number one, I have a general newsletter where I write about technology and startups and health science and teaching people to code. And I write about a variety of different subjects that we talk about on this show. So if you go to wclittle.com, there you'll be able to subscribe, and you'll also be able to subscribe to particular topics. If you're just interested in one or a few of them, you'll be notified right when I publish new content in those areas. Number two, my partners and I at Prota Ventures have a portfolio company called Startup Rocket. If you go to startuprocket.com, there you'll be able to receive coaching guides and customize an operations framework for you and your team and your advisors to be on the same page in terms of what is the appropriate next step for you and your entrepreneurial journey. And finally, if you wouldn't mind leaving a review anywhere that you have listened to this podcast or watched this podcast, would be super helpful to help those who might be interested in consuming this content as well. Thank you.